it doesn't show the screen, but let's see what I can do here. Just that. Start a poll. Well, this is actually an episode about Venus and Venus conjuncting deneb algedi this week and the sextiling eris in Aries. So this is a Venus night, Venus hour where I'm at. And the ascendant is actually ruled by Virgo with Venus in the 6th house in Aquarius. Yes, I'm doing this by heart. And the midheaven in the end of a Gemini. So Mercury ruled midheaven. Speaking about this Mercury will open another synodic cycle with Neptune that I think Astro Victor pretty much summed up. I don't think I have anything more to add, so beware of scammers. Don't focus on like clear communication, won't happen. You see, this is a Mercury ruled ascendant in midheaven. You're watching a black screen. It was not intended, but I'll just go with it and do it by heart. Mercury Pisces is excellent for expressing yourself with art, poetry, and whatnot. But this is not a Mercury Pisces episode. It's just honoring Mercury Pisces and moving on to two other things. So the first is Venus, and I'm actually sniffing Helwa's. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. Venus body butter that I really enjoy with the Venus in Taurus. So a little bit about the Venus transit that we are having right now. Venus is applying to deneb algedi, and this means that in the coming week or so, there would be a lot of chance to work with both Venus and deneb algedi together. So what is Venus and what is deneb algedi? Venus, first of all, is about connecting things, bringing things together. Okay? And this is why Venus is ruling cars, is ruling our voices, is ruling art and sensuality, okay, also in the eroticized way, bringing things together. It is also Venus. It is ruling artistic expression. When you think about art as connection, okay, most artists, when you talk about them, they always emphasize the connection. And if you're doing art yourself, then sometimes it is a way to connect with people where other ways are not so available. So connecting this to the Mercury Pisces. But also when those ways are available, it is celebrating connection. Yes. Yes, this is also a sign of wealth. And if you want to draw in wealth or attract erotic partners or attract friendship, is also Venus. She's ruling Libra and she's ruling Taurus. So both air and earth. Now, what is deneb algedi? Deneb algedi is a fixed star. It is also called the sacrifice star. But I will tell you about the uses I have with the deneb algedi. It is the fixed star you turn to for wealth redistribution. Okay? For example, and I'll give you my story, when I just began, I learned through actually Christopher Warnock and the Sphere and Sundry. I learned about the deneb algedi. And when I began to work with deneb algedi, nobody ever told me this. Okay, so I was working for my business. And of course, it is, when you start a business, then you're supposed to be in a giving mode. And I was going through a situation in my life where I just genuinely didn't feel I have this giving place in me. And I'm like, it's difficult for me to market my business because I feel outcast. There were certain things I was going through towards like Pluto in the 11th house, Pluto in the end of Capricorn. I'm like, I feel so detached and I don't feel like I'm able to freely give something right now, which was usually not my spirit, just when I need to market myself. And so the authenticity with deneb algedi led me to another place. And that was when I was not able to make money from like giving things. I did manage to have like certain types of income, but not when I was in my country, at least the most of it. And I did get donations, but also there was a time where I was like in between houses, and it was COVID, and I had to steal food. So it was showing me where to steal food and how to do this in a way that is like the least damaging. Okay, so like, oh yes, this business is a business, but you would do a little bit of, taking from those that perhaps are not distributing the wealth enough and assisting in this process. And so you begin to accept the many phases and phases of wealth redistribution. And also I was taken like on a market, and I began to learn about the businesses. So how do you treat clients, what to ask, and how to test the business as a client, but more so to learn about how to treat clients. And so how I see it is basically, this is the star of wealth redistribution. It will protect your wealth as well. But also, if you are in a situation where you cannot make like money right now, and you're authentic about it, okay, you're not giving from a place, and this is also where it connects with Venus now. You're not giving from a place of just to please other or from a depleted place. Okay, our giving is supposed to be from a full cup. Okay, and yes, sometimes you don't have, and you give and you release wealth, you release the congestion, but sometimes you really don't feel like you are able to do this. Then this is also leading to the other phase of wealth redistribution, which is receiving. And so deneb algedi is not just about protecting your property or defending things. Yes, absolutely it is, but it is about to make sure that the wealth is distributed correctly. Okay, for example, towards the end of my journey, when I already found a place to stay and so on, more consistently, then several cases happened when I would go, let's say, to the store and buy something, some food, and suddenly there would be like a mistake in a couple of shekels or something like this, I'm in Israel, in favor of the store, which I accepted as, okay, this is the time now that this, what I can return, then is returning naturally. And maybe the cashier stole it because she needed this, but I did not make a fuss over this. I was like accepting this. So this is also the work of deneb algedi, okay? There's a time where you need to receive the wealth, whether by donation or you have to get it somehow. And then there is the time of in between that you're not sure what you're supposed to do, and you get these clues, and then but there also you can say, okay, I don't like, because I constantly said, I don't like to steal, I don't like to steal. And so you're also shown certain sometimes deeper things or deeper roots. For me, for example, it was also communication, but also other existential gap, because I'm recovering from trauma, and this is very difficult to bridge that to people. Now let's bring deneb algedi with Venus. So deneb algedi and Venus together is about the redistribution, but of a particular type of wealth, the wealth of Venus. So you think about connection, friendship, cars, assets. Wait, there is a cat that is about to jump into a closed window. Let me fix this situation. Should I open the window? Can I open the window now? Okay. I thought I saved the situation. Now they're fighting. Anyway, so Venus is about the wealth of, let's say, car, let's say art, artistic expression, relationship, both romantic and friendship. Okay, Venus is about friendship in as much as it is about romantic relationships. It's about pleasure of connection in every way. So, what is deneb algedi? And I want to open with a story. I saw a short today. You know, I like to watch this YouTube shorts thingy, and always delineate like the spirit of what is happening. And this short was a very beautiful woman, and she was saying what girls mean when they say they like bad boys. And they see a picture of a man who's like with muscles, all pumped up, and looking good. But she said no. She makes her hands like X. No, ouch! I nearly hurt myself. No, not this type of fight. And then what she actually means was a good boy, but he looks like a bad boy. Someone inside is good boy, but he looks like a bad boy. Now, I think I can say every girl, but most girls on the planet, they had us like, oh, this is so true. Me too. And not in a me too kind of way. So, but then the first thing that came to my mind, and pardon my English, was generations of incels with Eureka now. Because it is just so prevalent that both women were accused of liking boys that are harmful, or they're this, or they're acting toxic and so on. And men are sometimes taught to act this way. So it's like you don't know, like you don't get any dates, and then you say, okay, I will learn the skill, and then they teach you stuff that is really awkward and only works. It's basically how to create a trauma bond, but you don't know that. So you say, okay, I don't know how to do relationships. I will give that a try. And what happens is now you are harassing girls, and the only girls it's going to work with is women that definitely need a lot of healing before they enter a relationship, let alone intimacy. So this is where you can get these situations. So somebody writes to me, I want your babies. I don't have babies, darling. Okay. This is interesting. So somebody wants my babies. I have kittens. They're not for sale. So this is a situation, but you see what the meta situation this is, huh? And this is a situation where there can be a lot of eurekas. I didn't even touch on eris. I will touch on this too. There can be a lot of eurekas. If you weren't being flirted with before, you might be now. If you, let's say, were always this type of person that gets from one connection to another, maybe now, if you are looking for more than just casual, multiple dating people, then maybe you will find it needs to be the other things need to be in your chart, but maybe you will actually find love that is long lasting. Basically, what is being redistributed is the wealth of love, of connection, of eroticism, of intimacy. And this is where it can also be if you hadn't got the attention or didn't feel desired, and now you will be. So you also want to make sure what house it is for you. And this is, for me, it is in the 12th house, so I don't look for secret affairs, but this is just so. But in other houses, you might have some, other type of connections. And that can be a wonderful time. It can also be a wonderful time of eureka. So you said, oh, that's what they didn't like. Or I thought that this goes in this way. And you could also feel understood. Okay, like that girl in the short. It's like, oh, finally somebody says that women don't like bad boys. They like people who are good boys. But they look like bad boys, but you know that they are good boys and they are actually good boys. And good boys, I mean, you know, like respectful and so on and so forth. Um, so, so that's what's up. Um, I think that this is a very nice spirited time for humanity. Also, when it is about, let's say, artistic expression, if you have not been, depending on what comes up, if you have not been making wealth from art and you're trying to do so, this might be, it just might be that there is a little bit of a chance here to make money from your art or from Venusian things. Okay. And now the thing is that I'm not sure Venus is still visible. I don't remember when she goes invisible. This you have to check with the Grassi. And so while Venus visible would give us love in the sense of, oh, now you actually flirt with someone, now you actually get together. Venus invisible would give us a little bit of the wisdom, okay? You might not be in a loving relationship right now, but what will happen is you are having the wisdom of, let's say you were in, you know, incel, sozusagen, and I mean it as involuntarily celibate. Okay, you're alone, but you don't want to be alone. It's just because of that. So you might get a little bit of eureka about things that you were thinking and you are behaving in a certain way that is not relationship yielding. Now you get the wisdom. Okay, now this knowledge get to you, this wisdom is coming to you, even if not the relationship just yet. And I want to also mention is not only Venus is conjunct in deneb algedi, which is highly benefic. It simply means that the Venusian things you didn't get to have, now you're getting a chance to have either in the wisdom or also the wisdom and the matter of things. And so now she's also at the time sextiling, she's already beginning to sextile Eris in Aries. So this one is, take this blessing and raise it up a notch, because Venus sextile in Aries means that certain type of it's kind of like two women agree. The one woman that was outcast, that was ignored, that was cast out of the society, okay? And the woman who is the love goddess, okay? And it's kind of like these women have an interaction, they meet in a certain angle where they have a conversation and they're like, oh my God, me too. Oh my God, me too. And now Aries is suddenly more included. And Venus is suddenly having a refreshing moment or a little bit of understanding. And this can very much express itself both in and amongst women, okay? In the sense that the woman who wasn't believed now is surrounded by a community of women that believe her, kind of like a mini Me Too effect, okay? Where the first woman began to speak, and then while there were many other women that were like, no, this is nothing, this is joking, this is that, and this should be spoken about. It's not just in the face of men. But there were also suddenly people did believe, people did validate. He saved a lot of lives. I truly believe it mitigated a lot of conflicts that we see in the world. Yes, you don't want people being silenced and not believed en masse. So they're trying to do this now. It's not going to age well or age. And so, but this is not just about all women, because Eris is not just to women. Yes, she was the sister of Mars, I think, the sister. But also, it can be the people who are outcast in general. Okay, so the people who had outcast, for example, were the men that were considered narcissistic, and now perhaps we can be more compassionate towards them. It's like, yes, we need to set our boundaries, need to hold people accountable, but it doesn't mean that we are casting them out. So this can be a lot of compassion, and also a lot of if a person was cancelled, okay, but it's not a rapist, it's not God forbid, someone, it's like a horrifying story. They can be returning to, because Venus is the voice, so the voice might be accepted now, the voice might be heard now. So the people who are outcast, the people who said things, and with Eris, it can be a person that was saying something that is a little bit more intricate, and because it doesn't fall in the boxes of black and white, they weren't listened, and now, or after years, they are listened, okay? And people are able to accept these things. So if I go back, let's say, to the mythos, so think about a man who was actually harassed himself, but was accused that he's harassing. And so who could hear about this during the Me Too? Nobody, right? Everybody was busy with their own triggers. And for a man, if you would talk about being harassed, you would think like, what are you, a bitch? Like you're a girl, what was the Jane Fonda thing? that. And so, and during the Me Too, there was like, hey, they had no voice. Because they would try to say, I was falsely accused. Nobody would fly, like you couldn't say false accusation at that time. And then after it meant a little bit, then we suddenly saw the Johnny Depp case or the men who were harassed by women at gender studies and so on and so forth. So it's like only after the wave of the Me Too, people could suddenly speak as men, but still it is still in the process of being. So this is just one example. Now we have, Eris is also ruling poisoning, so conversations about, let's say, COVID, or people who didn't want the vaccine, and now they're looked at differently, and sometimes people even repent towards them because they were at risk of losing their jobs, losing housing, and so on and so forth. And also the conversation of gender, okay, so a lot of complexity, but this is a more recent conversation here. Then perhaps we would be able to contain a more intricate voice into the discourse, okay? So again, we want to think about the marginalized in society in terms of Venus. Another thing that I expect if we talk about cars is the many cases where people were driving a car and we don't know if it was the AI or it was something in the nervous system. So some of it was the AI and sudden accident, but some of them, they were having a nervous system hack. I was talking about it several times. They were having a hack into the nervous system, and suddenly they couldn't move the limb, or they couldn't move the feet off the gas, or something like that. They had an accident. Some of them are dead. But I think we might have a progress with this conversation. So watch for that, okay? So suddenly, I know lawyers who are fighting for this to be acknowledged. They might get acknowledged. We might have a revelation, even scientific revelation, about this hacking into nervous systems. So information can come to you, okay? For me, it is 12th house. And I saw that as much as I don't hold a lot of, how should I say it, kindred feelings to the WHO, they did publish a statement to abolish any type of forced treatment in psychiatry worldwide, okay? This is where I say beware of the candies. We need to be able to do this with and without any sort of organization, because this is simply, the candies, the nuggets. What do people want right now? Oh, now we're going to give you this in the mental health. Oh, but we're going to say there is a poison, there is a vaccine, there is a this, there is a that you just have to take forcibly, okay? But in the mental health, no, no problem. Okay, so you have to also be aware of that. But this knowledge actually got to me during this shade period, during this time when Venus is about to conjunct deneb algedi. This happened in my 12th house of mental health. And of experiences of isolation and exile. So I get this information. It's like, hey, this is, and this is from WHO, okay, it's a more global issue. And so you see how both like LGBTQ, you can have your gender identity, but only if you do so and so surgeries that make you dependent on the medical system for the rest of your life. Okay, so and now when they solved this, then they can let go of the psychiatry a little bit, because many LGBTQ were considered a disease. So the identity was considered a disease. Now they can let go a little bit from there. But this is just moving oppression around instead of abolishing oppression. And so this is also something, to pay attention to. More on this Venus, Eris, I said in between women and themselves, cars, art and artistic expression. We can have revelations about people that we didn't think could be a part of like scandals, okay? Why am I saying that? Not just the Mercury Neptune scandals, child abuse exposed or, or hidden. But this is more about re-including those who were outcast. And so if we talk about, let's say, Johnny Depp as something that wouldn't be allowed before the Me Too, wouldn't be allowed recognition before the Me Too, but also not during the Me Too, then we're talking about, well, Epstein had not only male clients. And so certain names and certain people that we wouldn't be talking about. So it's both the coinciding of this Mercury-Neptune, where Neptune is about surrendering something, not in the sense of battle only, but letting go, allowing the situation to be, and then information pops, but also vanishes. So there will be collective forgetting, but also collective memory. For example, one tweet that I read was showing Jay-Z with, I think it was Weinstein or Epstein, one of these videos. And so somebody said, I'm so wishing that the conversation about P. Diddy would like already be resolved, because then we could get to the real conversation, showing Jay-Z with Weinstein, I don't know. And so this was one of the images, okay, that popped out of nowhere. That perhaps were shocking to some, or perhaps some people said, "Oh, finally, I don't know the topic." But of course, it's very important. Neptune, it dredges up from the deep well things to be leaked. So, and children and juristics and so on. But Mercury Pisces can also be about poetry and songwriting as well. So the conjoining of Venus, deneb algedi, and the sextile to Eris can be inclusivity that is achieved through exposure. And that too, I think we hear a little bit about songwriters coming to the forefront. What about our role in writing songs that made people millions? Songwriters are being signed contracts where all across the world of the music industry, where they cannot speak about their contract or their working conditions. It is kind of like all across the board. So with Mercury, Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, which kind of like a reality check. This is also a reality check to the music industry, songwriting, the performing artists, and so certain voices can be included that were outcast. I'm expecting a lot of singers who or musicians who were expelled from the discourse. Okay, remember the ruler of deneb algedi Venus is in Pisces, is Saturn. To start speaking, okay? To start speaking. I know that one, yes, I'm not a performing artist, but a singer, but I know that one of the things when I was questioning about this, I was shown many things to do with the hidden occults, the hidden societies. And one of the things towards this Pluto in the end of my 11th house, okay, now it's my 12th, that I was shown, it was like, look how far you have come without being a part of those secret cults, secret societies, and so on and so forth. And also look at the understanding that you do have this preparedness that met opportunity. That being said, there was all this corruption and there was only so far you could go, whether it was in your career or in a music or in a art or even in a writing, where there was only so far as you could go without being associated with something that perhaps is not kosher, so to speak. So there's all this combination. Okay, Saturn is in Pisces, Mercury is meeting Neptune. So things are going to pop up from like out of nowhere to be addressed. Okay, this is all preparing us for the general tone of the entire Pluto Aquarius, which is the voice of the underdog. And the sextile with Eris is the peak of both Eris and Aries. She's towards her last couple of decades in Aries. It sounds funny, but she's been there for a century. Okay, so we have at least 2 decades, but this is 2 decades in a century of exploring issues to do with eugenics, with the Übermensch. So this is a lot about the death of the Übermensch. And the transition from eugenics to biodiversity, with agriculture, in forestation, but also in people. This is a very interesting time to be alive, because the last time Aries, the French Revolution, Aries was probably in Pisces, if not in Aquarius. Okay, so we go also from the conjunction towards the sextile of Pluto Aries when Pluto is in Aquarius. Okay, I'm talking only Pluto in Aquarius. Take only Pluto in Aquarius. Last time maybe they met when they were conjuncting. Now we're going to meet with the sextile, and this is and in our cycle, the synodic cycle between Aries and Pluto, we're going from the square to the sextile, this closing square to the closing sextile of Pluto Aries. So we are culminating things to do with world wars. And we have to look not only at World War I and II, we have to look at least since the French Revolution. And so this is a very interesting thing, because we also understand things on the French Revolution. The people who were rebelling had lands. Okay, and I had this short when I said people that don't have lands, they make a world wars. People that have lands, they will just make revolutions. So let all people have land. The most trouble they will make is revolutions. So this is another thing that we cannot ignore when we are talking about the voice of the underdog. And deneb algedi is not about just the voice of the underdog. It's also asking, who is the underdog? Okay, if the underdog is a human trafficker, Yes, it's not about idealizing the human trafficker. It's about changing the conditions in which they are pushing a person to either be, kind of like a victim or predator. That is what it's about, okay? It's the death of the Ubermensch and the death of eugenics towards something is more biodiverse. But it's also, there is a chance of, not idealizing, let's say, the tribe. Where if we talk about eugenics, so before there was the word eugenics, there was bloodline segregation, okay? Whenever this was practiced, we got similar results to a genocide wherever. Way before America, way before the French Revolution, way before colonialism, tribal society, okay? And so if we don't want these results, world wars, we need to change the bloodline segregation. That being said, I saw, and I always say I saw a short, and it's true. I would see a short and it would get me to think. There is this Vietnamese woman who's married to a German person. And she said, before I moved, when I was a child, my mama told me you should marry someone not more than 20 kilometers from this house. And she laughed it off and went to Germany, married a man. They're very much in love. But then she comes to visit her parents and she said, oh my God, my mother, she had a point to it, because if I was living 20 kilometers away from my mother, I could jump with my children. If I'll have children, I will be fed by my mother. Our relationship is so much better when I'm grown. And now I cannot see her when I live in Germany with my boyfriend. Okay. So yes, biodiversity necessitates traveling. And this poses other sets of questions, that couples get together and couples go apart, and when there are children. So I'm not saying this does not have difficulty or challenges, but definitely interracial marriage and intertribal marriage are the other extreme that we are slowly learning that is not the aspiration. This has led us to world wars and the generation and hereditary diseases and all that jazz. So, but not the jazz of freedom. So that is the bigger cycle. Okay, and so it's a chance for people to hold their intricacy, be able to receive information. A sextile, think about the closing sextile as holding that dissonance and discovering that there is the golden way, the midway, not black and not white. Okay? It's the golden way. When you have a dissonance, when you have a square, when you have an opposition, somebody tells you the golden way and you're like, what golden way? I don't know where to find it. I don't know how to do it. In the sextile, okay, the trine is like, you just tap into it and it's there. But the sextile, it's like with a little effort, you see that you can hold that dissonance, okay? That you can maybe, not have to go from Vietnam to Germany, but also maybe you would find a technological solution, okay? Aquarius. Or maybe you would just, removing bloodline segregation, so neighboring tribes are not at war anymore. And so, they can be healthier species, healthier immune systems. Yes, you don't have to go all the way to, I don't know where, but in your neighborhood, in your neighboring tribes, just not to be so fanatic. Yes, it's reasonable. And this is also something that is being accentuated with this small cycle of Venus conjuncting deneb algedi and sextiling eris, okay? It's a century-long theme connected with this smaller cycle of Venus. So All in all, some things that had triggered you in the past by the merit of Saturn in Pisces, okay, Venus is still ruled by Saturn, now in transit, will appear. But you will also have a little bit more of an earth sign quality to it, where now you can handle this, and now you can think about things and as the passage of time. Okay, and I'll give another example that I ran into today. So one example was some woman was being with a woman, and she came to a group and she said, I saw there was a situation in our intimate life where I was very excited and passionate, but my partner told me no, this later she told me she was being in pleasing patterns or whatever she calls this, and she said that the other partner said she had experienced the situation as rape. Okay, so this partner comes and says, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't want to be, I'm not her therapist, but also she wants to continue this connection. So do I. What would you need in this situation? And so this is a woman acknowledging that she has committed sexual boundary violation and wanting to go out. Instead, she was criticized for bringing in her partner's very authentic voice that said, I had experienced this as rape, saying, oh, rape is too much for this, too much for that. Now, triggering as this was, and in the beginning I was very blunt in my reaction, after a while I remembered, and this is Saturn in Pisces, okay, you reflect back, remembered, okay, I think back to the Me Too. Think back to when there were laws against sexual harassment in workplaces, okay? By the way, my satire, Sugar Free Lemonade, it was a response to what they called as the feminists are killing the romance. So I basically played the romantic partner. That's showing, okay, I don't like the sex this way. I'm looking for the type of sex that I do like. What do I need for good sex? And I took it all the way. Okay, I went to work in a sex ed education company. Boss, okay, I took it very seriously. It was not just a satire. It was like, okay, what do I do want? And so that was the Sugar-Free Lemonade, okay? But this is where thinking back to the time, I could write a more detached post, a detached voice that says, just when people began to say, okay, this was sexual harassment, this was rape, this was not the sex that I want to have. And not only was it not the sex that I want to have, it was also terrifying experience. And so this not only, before we even take little men out of the equation, this was also experienced by women. It was pushing their buttons. And so you imagine you were in a certain situation, your boundaries were not so respected, but you lived with it, and some other woman says, I was raped, look what happened to me. Okay, women were outraged. They did not understand what to do with that. They were shit fucked, triggered all across the board. And I know as a person who worked at a sex education, the conversation with a friend who was a relationship coach. And so I was exploring orgasms, she was exploring relationships. And she gave me a lot of good tips about relationship. And one of the things she said, you should never totally surrender yourself. You should always keep something to yourself. And I asked her, but what about orgasm? And she said, what about orgasm? And I said, yeah, well, your cervical orgasms. And then she went ballistic. I remember this until today. She went ballistic. She exploded on me. And there was a huge preach of how we should not, as women, be all the time expected to have cervical orgasms and so on and so forth. And I was like, oh my God, where did I? And I understood that it's kind of like you have a morse and you just pop it. And it was just going all this stuff in my face. but it's something that the sex educators were very used to. And this was exactly this point. I hit the spot. If I followed your all of your relationship tips, I could not have a cervical orgasm with the man. It wouldn't, because you need to surrender. You need to like have this complete trust. Okay, but trust in the world financially right now is created by, if somebody rapes children, then they can use a child to seduce them and then blackmail them, and then they trust them because they know that they can, that they can eliminate this person, and this is how they create trust with each other. Okay, that's not the trust that causes cervical orgasms. Bringing it all back together. so so now it's a different sex we're looking for, it's a different structure we're looking for, it's also a different type of trust we're looking for. Okay, it's not the trust in between pedos, but a different type of trust that allows for life. We talk about fertility, so birth giving, and children and whatnot. So all of these are interlinked and tied together. Okay, and so you can think about how a woman that just wanted to say I had experiences, not just like I had a bad sexual experience. I went with something that was very terrifying, and that needs to change. Okay, is either going to be put in. My God, my cat leaned on me. I was like, "What is happening?" And I'm in my bedroom. What's happening? It was so terrifying. So basically, the everythingness that needs to change in the world is also coming to our bedrooms, to our intimate lives, and so on and so forth. And so when people speak about these things, either they're being put in a box of, you went through rape. It's like, wait a second. Let me decide for me. Let me just breathe. Let me take a moment to understand what the fuck is happening. But sometimes it's happened for people just because somebody writes a post and then very naively says something. In this case, was the person who committed the violation that acknowledged the very experience in the name of the person who was hurt. And she was doing everything right. She was like, okay, what do I need to provide in this situation? So there are a lot of, it's everybody stepping on everybody's toes in those ways, and people genuinely learning how to dance a different dance, and so this situation of, kind of like the Venus Eris, with the conjunction to deneb algedi, is bringing in those issues, as Saturn is in Pisces, that are centuries old, decades old, with another point of view, but we're talking in the theme of closure here. Okay, so the girl that once said rape meaning coercion, and everybody snapped at her that she's using the wrong juristical term, even though juristically she was right. So, okay, and everybody was went bonkers, and these everybody were other women, and so now is meeting through this conversation again, but this time understanding the passage of time. And it's both by the merit of Aries. It's like, oh, I said something 20 years ago. Now I see everybody says that. Back then, if I said that, or when I said that, everybody snapped at me, wished me to be raped by many people, wished me like really weird, fucked up stuff, and then me too. And then astral boundaries. And then acknowledgement in psychic attacks and sexual boundaries violation in psychic attacks. Okay, it's like 20 years later. And so this is another place where this situation is meant with more detachment, and there's a sense of closure. Okay, you're not being crucified, decentralized, going completely balloonies, being totally outcast, but you're holding a place where, like, okay, I know this, I'm more experienced, I understand that this is a certain process that we're going through. Okay, in the passage of time, I see how things are progressing relative to that topic. So this can be gender issues, this can be sex issues, Venus, okay, bringing things together, also erotically and sexually and physically. This can be the voices in a conversation, okay. Um, this and yes, so one thing I absolutely did not expect with the eclipses conjuncting Eris, but it happened, was the rise of anti-Semitism, but also the very interesting and intriguing situation of, let's say, Palestinian people, because they have been, much like the Israelis, compared to both Hitler and the Jews, okay, at the same time. So this is very interesting and very intriguing. Just, just noticing, just observing. But one thing I did not think that I would be dealing with is, a fellow Twitter person in America, in Canada, saying, "Oh, there are masses of people around my house called to kill Jews, and somebody was firing a gun." Like, the fuck is going on with the world? And that's kind of like something I didn't think that would have just like, and very much like feminism. Like, haven't we seen that? Haven't we seen enough of that? Aren't we over that yet? Why do we have to play this in again? Can't we all just like live or something? But apparently these things are happening. And so Venus conjuncting the algedi sextile in Eris is also another episode. And this is a closing sextile, so we can expect to hear varied voices and contain a little bit more intricate voices in this conversation, both understanding that there are certain things that we don't know, and understanding that Cohen, every Cohen and Levy are not your Rothschild and what else, Rockefeller, whoever. This is also understanding these things. Yes, I don't think Anne Frank had a bank. There was no reason that she would go to the gas chambers and so on and so forth. And it's just a thing to think about. So we have, I am predicting more intricate voices and messages being delivered perhaps in a way that is more accepted. Okay, so if you say, instead of saying the Jews, saying Rothschild would be appreciated. Okay. Okay, instead of saying Zionists and Nazis, saying eugenics would be more appropriate. Saying bloodline segregation, ooh, now you got it. But these are just offers. There can be many more aspects and words and concepts that are way more relevant to the topic of discussion. Venus, yes, it is also not finances in the sense of, it can also be somewhat banking, yes, currency. So the conversations about, let's say, the impact of changing currency on elderly, outcast, disabled populations can be a topic of discussion, and perhaps there can be more awareness towards these things. This is yeah, well, a funny thing that I saw, Saturn in Pisces tends to sink ships. And the last thing that I saw was a Greenpeace ship with a lot of organic biomass. Okay, that's the stuff you put for plants, soil, but it's kind of like or compost or something. Was drowned by the Houthis in the Red Sea, and there was oil that was running this ship, so the oil leaked and created a great pollution. And Greenpeace, of course, were posting it in their own page. So we see a little very interesting quiz on environmental issues. Okay, alongside the theme of ships sinking, which is kind of like Saturn Pisces in general. So another issues to do with the refugees. Saw a video of Mr. Wilders, Geert Wilders in Netherlands, kind of mentioning of the relations of immigrants to women, to transgenders, LGBTQ, to Jews, and he kind of mentioned all of these together. And he kind of said, well, I don't like that, and so on and so forth, thereby winning the voices of the marginalized society in Netherlands. And so this is where we see all kinds of very intricate voices. Okay, Mr. Wilders is a right-wing leader in Netherlands, who was elected. And then people say, oh, but US and Israel funded him. Who did you want to fund him? No, Muslim Brothers? No. So they're all funded somehow. And that is also very interesting. So having your voice heard, having your voice accepted, being understood, and again, understanding does not necessitate agreement. Okay, sometimes in acceptance there can be a change of opinion. Okay, sometimes sometimes in a validation. Venus is about validation. When validation is provided, you can get out of a certain pattern or coping mechanism that you have with Saturn Pisces, addiction, coping mechanism. When you're being validated, okay? So the Venus people, because Aquarius itself is a lot about resilience. It's a Saturn-ruled sign. It's the Saturn outside of the system, but let's say it's if we're talking about, let's say, the alternative to the system, okay? Then Saturn Aquarius will acknowledge the disabled, but it will be more like, okay, let's see how can we create a working environment where also the disabled people can work in. Sometimes it will be like abolishing, labor or culture and so on, or corporate culture and so on. But what it is not is about validating everyone. Okay, Aquarius is not about validating everyone. It's not about it's providing radical acceptance for who you are, but it's not about validating you. If that makes sense, okay? Venus brings in the validation. Venus brings in the, okay, you need to be validated. You need to be validated. Okay, bringing in the validation to people who didn't get validation. That can open up a resilience that wasn't there with people who needed that validation. Okay, so you think about misrepresented voices. You think about even political conflicts. Okay, is it just saying? One of the most beautiful memes that I saw, again, in the regard of like the Palestinians and Israelis, was that, kind of like the resolution for this conflict. And you had Palestinian people, and next to that, the green V check. Israeli peoples, next to that, the green V check. And even an X on the leaders. And so that's one way to go about it. Let's just accept the fact that your people and my people have a right to be. Okay? Let's just accept the fact that we, the people, have a right to land. Let's just accept it. Okay? And so we the gays, we the people, we the women, we the this, we the that, and all of those people that tend to outcast the eris people have a right to be. So I'm not saying it's going to be like the idyllic, but definitely it can be an awakening from a lot of bubbles, which Saturn does. So bubbles bursting, okay? Both the bubbles that there are no challenges to you coming from that faraway land and the other person coming from that faraway land. But also the bubbles of conflict and the bubbles that this person should be outcast and nobody should listen to him and and they don't have anything interesting to say or relevant to the conversation. These bubbles can also burst, and that can be interesting to watch. So when it comes to you, what do you need to look at? Your natal chart, okay, not just world events. Where is Aquarius in my chart? Okay, you go by the ascendant or from the sun, the moon, or whatever, bunch of planets that you have anywhere. So where is Aquarius in relation to them? Which sign is it? And I love whole sign houses, not because other house systems are no good, but because this is very simple for people who don't know exactly, like, oh, I think I'm this ascendant, I think I'm that ascendant, and I need to count from your sun or count from your moon. Then this is a very useful approach. Okay, yes, other house divisions have their properties. They can give you a more like a distribution of how prevalent are these topics in your chart. They're very useful, and they're working with intercepted houses. There are many interpretations. Okay, but whole sign houses speaking. Aquarius. Where is Aquarius? So this topic, this house is going to pop up. Okay, for me it is the 12th, so things to do with the mental health, with relationships with people who are in faraway land, with refugees in exile, and so on and so forth. Yes, 12th house issues. If this is, and then you need to look at where is Pisces, because Saturn is in Pisces, and Mercury as well. Okay, Mercury closing and opening a cycle with Neptune, and Saturn doing Saturn things. Okay, drowning ships and stuff, but also myth busting, especially about addictions, about spies and spying, about refugees. Okay, one of the memes that I saw regarding refugees is like, oh, Euro countries, when people bomb Palestinian civilians, so showing like this happy face, and then Euro countries when all the refugees from Palestine come to Europe, okay, and going into this depressed state. So this is very much Saturn in Pisces, okay. And that is also a bubble bursting. Where do you think all these refugees that you are deporting coming from? All these conflicts that you are supporting, and so on. So, but Saturn Pisces is also a reality check to the fact Saturn Pisces is also you are not imagining. One of the biggest bubbles, okay, if I could join, let's say for me, the 12th house and this Saturn Pisces, the first, a lot of people that had traumatic events think that what they see, the visions that they see, is either psychosis or flashbacks. Okay, I don't even think about a third option. Those things that you're feeling, they are actually happening right now to some people. Some of it you'll see on the news, some of it you won't. There's a third option, okay? And so Saturn Pisces could simply be you are not imagining. And so interference, yes, has to be taken into account. Saturn Pisces can be also about incarnating a dream. So this is where you have to take actual steps in this real life to do something, and you're doing that. You're going through this lengthy process of creating a dream. So you could be creating poetry, movie, an album, okay? So Saturn Pisces could be as validating, especially with Venus now in Saturn sign, as can be. No, you're not imagining. And not only that, this is not only you are not being psychotic, but you're also not having a flashback. Those things that you see that are actually happening to people right now. And now maybe we can think about, now that we are aware, we can think about what are the points of interferences. We can change the reality. There's a reality now that we understand this is a reality. And also on the other case, Saturn is also fears. Saturn Pisces can be that what you are afraid of is actually not that scary as you thought. Okay, so sometimes speaking out or saying something is not as scary as you thought. We also need to see where is Pisces, because sometimes like you are speaking up and then just like things that you weren't afraid that will happen, now something happens, like, gee, that's like a new fear. Okay, yeah, so somebody's naively speaking out about, let's say, a boundary violation that they've been through, and then what they're being criticized is the word that they are using. So this is, it's like, of the many things that could happen, I didn't think that this would happen. So that can also be. But this is just the context. And the next thing you are looking for is Eris. Then Aries, yes, Eris in Aries. So Aries. So we get 3 consecutive houses that are activated in your chart. And this actually brings me to the next topic. And so the next topic is this Mars applying to square Uranus. And so Mars is the ruler of that Aries, this Chiron, and this Rahu. Mars applying to square Uranus is also applying to sextile Aries and conjunct deneb algedi. Now, there is an orb for a fixed star that is tighter. Okay, right now with Venus, what we are feeling, unless we're highly energy sensitive, we are feeling Venus sextiling Eris, which is a planet. You know, I love saying that. What we're not yet feeling is the very tight orb of Venus conjuncting deneb algedi. We're going to feel it in a couple of days. Mars is applying not just to square Uranus. It squares Uranus and then already applying to sextile Eris in Aries. So where are we going to have friction and when are we going to have resolution? And then it's going to conjunct deneb algedi. What is Mars? Before we go to Uranus, okay, what is Mars? If you wonder why I didn't talk about Venus squaring Uranus, squaring Uranus, it already happened. She's moved on. We are releasing from that. I talked about it in my forecasts, money come flying out of your pocket or in, I don't know. Maybe that was the case for you. For me, I felt more validated, and so I didn't have to do types of food and types of shoppings that I would have done otherwise. So that is interesting. In a little bit of a eureka moment. And also I had just the vegetable that I needed when I needed it. So this was very interesting. the bounties of Jupiter in Taurus. Now, Mars. Mars is action. Mars has a telos, okay? It's a direction. Action, direction. What do you do when you have a direction and you go into there in that direction, okay? You're going in a straight line, okay? You're penetrating something. Okay, it's like it's an arrow that penetrates the air. It literally is. In Aquarius is an arrow that penetrates the air. Very compatible for sapiosexual sex, the entire Mars-Venus. But for those who are, as you know, Venus in the 12th house, it's the bedroom, but it's also like I have no interest in secret affairs. So, so yeah. But if for you it's like the 5th house or the 7th house, then yes, it's a good thing to enjoy. So Mars is, yes, it is. There was an argument actually on Twitter saying that we can use only Venus to describe relationships, and Mars is just aggression and rape. I don't go by this. It's also when you think about Mars as ruling the penis and the kind of like the blood flow when erection basically. And you know, as being a sex educator, actually penises that are attuned to vaginas or to other penises are way more intricate, and it is definitely not about violence and rape. Absolutely not. So much so that some men think they have erectile dysfunction, where what they have is attunement to the vagina or the bumhole or whatnot. So this is actually, yes, it doesn't, rule of thumb, erect penis does not mean that everybody wants it. Not erect penis, surely somebody is not ready, even if that somebody is you. So that is Mars. Those things are all Mars. So yes, I absolutely ascribe to that, and Mars is drive and passion and enthusiasm and walking a certain path. It is also aggression. Okay, it's energy. If you have an outlet for this energy that is constructive, if this energy meets in a constructive way, then this is the outlet that you're going to have. If this energy is meeting in a non-constructive way, it's not about gender, you're going to have bad results, okay? For those of you who were there when I was doing the chart of the synastry of me and the person that had violated my boundaries in academia, it was the first time ever that I looked at it, and I was like thinking to see weird outer planets to inner planets, this and that. No, we had square Marses. In fire to water, okay? So this created a situation that was traumatic. It's just the energies, the angles at which our Mars is met created this friction of mutual emasculation. And so Mars is also where we meet this energy in a way where it's a good outlet, or we meet that energy in a way that creates that much friction that is for sure is not compatible with any intimacy. Okay? So Mars in friction is generally something you want to avoid. Some people say, well, Mars square Venus or Mars opposition Venus can create tremendous sexual attraction. And if other things are coming, I'm not the one to judge. I'm not saying it's impossible. Yes, friction is a part of, also sex. But the thing is that what is Mars creating this friction with is a question. And what are the mitigating factors? So now we're talking about this Mars. Mars is, so we talked about like the sex stuff, but Mars, yes, it's also war. But it's also real estate, it's also banking, okay? This is the banking, okay? It's the banking that we love to hate, banking. It's the fiscal banking, it's the manipulation banking, okay? is not just the value system banking, or the currency banking, okay? It's the banking of the evacuation of people from the apartments bank, is that banking. And so Mars square Uranus is a friction that is in a closing square, is a closing friction. And Uranus is about rebelliousness, is about technology. So Uranus is both the technology of, let's say, this I just keep calling it CBD. It's central banking, that they want to have one digitized coin for like the whole world. And so it's both that and the rebellion against that. Welcome to Uranus. And so Mars-Uranus square is the questions of, penis, sex, real estate, banking, all meet together to coerce something new that and rebel that very new coercion. And so we're likely to see explosive stuff. Uranus is explosion, Mars is war. So explosive conflicts. But you have to understand, this is the closing square. After which there will be the closing sextile. Okay, Mars in Pisces is going to be sextiling Uranus. Mars at the end of Pisces is going to be sextiling Uranus in Taurus. So now we're dealing with the closing square. It's that final, it can also be a heated argument. It's that final blow up before there's some sort of a resolution. And then we would come to close the synodic cycle of Mars-Uranus. Okay, so synodic cycles is another thing that I do in my 2024 as a Fuga series. So you can, search my videos for that. What could be the type of explosions? Mars-Uranus, the opposition really had to do with the rape accusation discussions, the invalidation of like rape accusations and stuff like that. Okay, it was a Mars-Uranus. And now the closing square, okay, Uranus-Taurus is about validation, or hell broke loose. Okay, when it comes to Uranus, hell broke loose. Regarding what? Regarding women, regarding the fiscal system, regarding validation, regarding cars, everything, transportation. It's kind of like hell broke loose. And so relationships, severing ties, divorces, yes, but also in terms of sexuality. Okay, Mars is exactly opposing this point. Okay, at the opposition. So Mars at the opposition was like, if somebody is going to this ecstatic motion that they to attack, and they are doing something, want to destroy someone, so Mars would just imitate this very chaos and would throw the chaos back. It's like, and this is where boundaries are loose. Okay, it's kind of like going mad. But the closing square is in an air sign. So this is a little bit of an intellectual debate, but also the square is a dissonance where both sides have something to say. Now we have to look at rulership. Mars is ruling Eris, is ruling Scorpio, is ruling Eris in Aries, and is ruling Rahu. Mars is ruled by Saturn, that's in Pisces. Is ruled by Jupiter, that's in Taurus. Where Uranus is ruled by Venus. Where's Venus? In Aquarius. And so, if you remember the times before Venus, when Venus was in Sagittarius, I said, my dear Aquarians, this is the time where you have to listen to your wife. She's right now. Venus is right. She and Jupiter have more of a say than you. But the Saturn was in Jupiter's sign, which was in Venus sign, which was in Jupiter's sign. Okay? But now we got something different. Aquarians have a point to say. And Aquarians is about space. For example, the argument that people are way less rapey when they have a space to be, regardless of gender. Now that we got the point that women can imitate this rape and return it to sender, okay? We don't want to perpetuate these cycles. And so space is another solution. And now Aquarius has the word here. Aquarius will say, I told you that if all people will have land, they can all retreat to that safe space and not violate each other. At least let them have these conditions, okay? And so on and so forth, to which Uranus can say, well, of course, but if they are keeping doing that and that and that, that was relevant when Venus was in Pisces. Like, we agree on that, we got that now, but now the question is back to space, back to radical acceptance, back to those things, and also back to taking something on a global, all humanity level, okay? And so Uranus, what Uranus has to say to Mars, and Venus is in Aquarius, is very much like, well, all across the board, we should be abolishing rape, okay? And so what Mars in an air sign have to say, everybody should be having enough space for themselves. And so now we are, if we needed to listen to Venus, when Venus was in Sagittarius, okay, this was when you had to listen to the woman in the room, or to Venus Jupiter, okay? But definitely Aquarians had like, hey folks, you really need to get it straight. Now we're needing to listen to the Aquarians of the bunch. Now, how is it done? Venus is in Aquarius. She's conjunct in deneb algedi. She's receiving validation. Now she can listen to Aquarius. Now that you validated me, and this could be a very funny moment for Aquarius as Mars is reaching this point, because Venus is actually validating the Aquarians back, while Mars is conflicting. So the final square can be a point where Mars has to listen to Aquarius. Mars wants to push forward, push forward, push forward. Aquarius is like, hold up. Hold up. Okay? You want housing? Respect the women. Okay? Yes? But also you should not be in a place like if you cannot do this, then it's not like you should not leave or you should be exterminated. You just need to be very far from where you could hurt someone. Okay, Aquarius is an air detachment. Okay, Aquarius is also about putting the veil of ignorance. It's not about intersectionality so much. Okay, it doesn't mean that it won't acknowledge this, but it is more about what can we say about the whole of humanity? If I don't know what tribe I am from, what flag, what nationality, what gender, what this, what that, if I don't know anything about anything, okay, what would be the opening position that would be relevant for entire humanity? This is why it's sextile in Eris. Okay, all the Kantian notion of, the Kantian imperatives, those are very much in sextile with the spirit of for all humanities, the reasoning for all humanity. But what Aquarius is not so much holding is validation. When Venus is in Aquarian sign, she's bringing that in. So now Aquarius has the component validation in the machine learning type of logic that it already makes. And so it will give you the validation with the bigger picture. Yes, we don't want people to rape other people, but did you know that all tribes were doing that? So it's not something that you can associate with one thing or another. Maybe we will just make sure that this is out of the question, but also we need to make sure that everybody has enough land, because when people don't, they really lose it, and then hell breaks loose. Okay, eventually women will begin to rape people, to exploit people, to torture. We don't want that either. Okay, so we need to have space, and Aquarius is always resolving things with, let's put some space, let's put some air, let's put some, what is Aquarius? It's also the water bear. Okay, did you drink enough? Did you sleep enough? Let's put the conditions that allows us to think clearly into the equation. Let's make sure everybody gets the good conditions that allow them to make the good choices in their lives. Okay, and now this is something that Venus and Mars can draw into. But Mars square Uranus is where your action, the action that you're taking, is at odds with some other rebellious action. So you are repelling the rebels. But this is even more intricate, because Uranus is both the rebels and the rebels who rebel the rebels. Add Mars into the mix, it's explosive. But what is this Mars sextiling? It's sextiling Eris. And so the misrepresented, the underdogs, those who didn't get the validation by Eris sextiling Venus, can get a little bit of explosive when Mars is with Eris, because Mars is action and Eris is the sister of Mars. So she is God, war goddess, he is war god, and now they're just collaborating forces. Okay, Mars sextile Aries is this is Mr. Geert Wilders from Netherlands saying, I stand with Israel, because these Muslim brothers, they're mistreating women, they're mistreating gays, they're mistreating this, they're mistreating that. Okay, so this is a right-wing person standing with, I don't know, the marginalized in a side in a certain conflict, but because of the point of anti-Semitism, Aries. In Aries, anti-Semitism is ancient, but Aries in Aries gave it another eugenics kind of flavor. So that is just an embellishment on bloodline segregation. Trans people and LGBTQ people, okay, women is marginalized in those societies, and disabled people. Okay, so we have a right-wing person standing for the rights of the disabled, the women, the trans, and so on and so forth, winning the elections by far. But you have to understand that Mars sextile in Aries is the right-wing militant leader, okay, that was the underdog to the hierarchy, is supportive of the marginalized. You need to get that this is also what Mars sextile in Aries means, okay? Venus sextile in Aries is, that outcast woman. If I talked about, Venus retrograde or Venus invisible, or Venus retrograde in Leo, that was, the Madonna and the whore meet and they have a lot in common. Then Venus sextile Aries is kind of like the sex worker and the survivor of human trafficking meet, and they're like, oh my God, we're in par on this. You see it from that angle, I see it from that angle, and both were like, yes, the labor market is entirely corruptive. It comes, the sex workers is coming to me too. They're sending bots, they're saying this, they're saying that. The woman, the human trafficking. So that before I got to be in this situation, I just try to work, and all of the things that you described that happened to you at sex work is just happening to me at work. So I was like, but that's why I started to do sex work. Like, why were you thinking that that's gonna work? I mean, if it's like that in all workplaces, of course it's gonna be like that in sex work. Eventually, there was just postponing like the end, and it's like, yes, that's what I did. Yeah, okay, we shouldn't have argued with me when we were squaring. Okay, so but this is just it's kind of like, oh, the camaraderie. Mars Aries is kind of like, we should nuke them, we should bomb them. What did we say? We should nuke them? Yeah, you're right. Perhaps a little more explosive though, because last time they were complaining about silencing the veterans and like people being like at the margins. We don't want the people at the margins. Like, either you run away far enough not to be hurt, or just poofing out, because it's just not humane. It's not humane. It's not humane. It's not humane. We must nuke them, but efficiently, so that they will die, but humanely. Yeah, that's the right thing to do. Okay, that's Mars Aries. So Uranus comes to save the day. Okay, and so before these guys agreeing on nuking everybody, but just doing it efficiently so that people will die humanely or survive, and not the horrors that they want to avoid by nuke, basically, then there is Uranus coming to square the situation. It's like, hey, didn't we agree upon the fact that there is always a third option? It's not either nuking them or not nuking them. There's always a third option. Mars and Aries is like, yeah, you're just talking about rape. It was like, we talked about it, you just say it's not, and so on. Like, no, but all of you could eliminate the word rape from the equation. There are still more options. What are those? Okay, so this is the conversation that we're having now mondaily. Mars squaring Uranus is like, oh my gosh, this is explosive. Mars sextiling Aries, this is just an agreement on how effective our war is going to be and what are our ways to do it humanely. So we want to include everybody. And Mars in an air sign, so maybe gas or frequencies or waves. And this is like, Uranus sees that, and it's kind of like, yeah, but no, this is too elegant. Okay, so you can understand that the sky is a bit weird right now. And it's not a bad thing that at the background we have Venus applying to deneb algedi while this happens. Because just before Mars is going to get to deneb algedi, Mars on deneb algedi, so we get the square to Uranus, and then the sextile, here in degrees away, the sextile to Aries, then the conjunction to deneb algedi. That's the move around Aquarius now. What Mars conjunct in deneb algedi can be, if you weren't bombed before, you might be, which is not exactly good, because this is about redistribution. War redistribution, okay? So you think about Finland being in NATO, but it's also, if this place was war waging now, perhaps now you could be more protected. Perhaps now you could be more understood. Okay. So this can be by means of a weapon coming to you. Okay, Mars rules weapon. But it can also be by legitimacy to your means of assertion, and it can also be to do with banking system. Bankruptcy is very much Mars. Okay, going in debt, being in debt is Saturn. Going bankrupt, this can be both Saturn, but it's Mars. Mars is like, this is broken. The situation is broken. It doesn't mean it cannot be fixed, because Mars is also fixing what is broken. So if you are bankrupt, this could be fixed. But it can also mean that some will go bankrupt. Okay. It's ruling Rao. So it's heading to a certain direction. The deneb algedi there always wants to preserve a certain equilibrium or distribute things well. So this is where, after the discussions that we have, there are certain actions that are now more available to you, because Mars is also taking action. Okay. And again, on a personal level, Aquarius, for the Mars in particular, okay, for the Venus is less of a problem. Venus is about connection, bringing things together. Mars is about severing ties, and Mars is also about severing ties with the unjust. Okay? Mars can also have to do with litigation. So, and again, we're talking about something that comes after a certain closure of something. So there, if there is a process of litigation happening right now, is likely to come to a fruition, to an end, an ending of a cycle. So if people try to litigate, let's say, the World Health Organization, that can be, so any litigation process, to some degree, can be about taxation processes. I guess some sort of action will be taken, but there is a crisis and a resolution before these steps are taken. Mars on the deneb algedi is just going to be like, okay, we accept the certain situation as it is, and whether there was a crisis before, because Mars deneb algedi in itself is not necessarily like the crisis, is more like the acceptance of things and then the allocation of wealth accordingly. Okay, and so this is also about allocation of space itself. Okay, you think about how crowded, let's say, prisons are, how crowded refugees live in, because this Saturn ruling this duo is still in Pisces. And you think about, again, the crowdedness, okay, and creating more space. But it also means that people who were less crowded can be getting more crowded in certain situations. And this is, how should I say this? If you didn't acknowledge the importance of having your own space, boy, are you going to learn this. When I had Saturn in my 12th house, I was thinking, I'll just have a bed in a hostel. What do I need? A place to lay my head so I can think more about my business and not address the housing issue for now. More than that, it was the most stupid things to do when Ketu is in your 10th house and Ra is in your 4th house. But it was not stupid in the sense that I could also give me a breadwink to think about housing. And then the very setting that I chose to think about where I want to live, and I was thinking in terms of job, was basically showing me, okay, no, you can't just sleep in a hostel, even when you travel. No, you can't just sleep in a bed in a hostel. Okay, everybody snores, people invade your space. No, you can't just sleep in a shared hostel with people. Okay, and in shelter that was a hostel. This is where I've been in the Arno in Netherlands. Okay, it's a hostel. It's only three people, but all of us snoring. And then so I remember I said the security person, they treat us so well, they feed us. I've really no bad word to say about this place. And just for the simple thing that all of us are snoring. So am I. I'm also snoring, I discovered. I cannot sleep. I feel like I want to unalive myself over nothing. And all he could do is listen to me. And I'm like, this is so weird. Okay? But definitely I got to understand that no, not only for housing is this not good, but even when I travel, hostels are not an option. Sleeping together in one room, a couple of people, as long as it depends on me, okay? Not to think that I can do it, and it's not an option. And it became so much so that I used the word that Hitler used for living space. So I said, we need to have a living space, but not in a Hitler kind of way. That was happening before the 7th of October. Okay. So what I'm saying is that if you didn't acknowledge the fact, if you thought, what do I need for myself? A bed in a hostel and salamat. And then you are going to be, yes. So for me, it was about myself. I was not criticizing others. If you are also criticizing others, it could be more of a crisis point for you because you might be put in such a situation. And so it can be more crowded for certain people that didn't acknowledge the fact that they need space, but it can also be way less crowded. When Mars hits deneb algedi, it can be way less crowded for people who have been in a situation that was incredibly crowded. Okay, so this is where the wealth is redistributed. Okay, one of the things that we are already seeing is the airdrops from the US of food to Gazan people. It was like people are saying we wanted this for so long. They put UNRWA there. UNRWA were doing the 7th of October as well. We were like, hey, this just puts us in a certain position. And then suddenly food is dropping. Yes, in a bit of a delay. Saturn Pisces again. You're whistling. There's a plane here and it's whistling. It sounds like a 747. It doesn't sound like a combat plane. Maybe I'm wrong because it seems to fly a bit higher and it's whistling. Is that a 747 or I'm just imagining? Saturn in Pisces knows. So we finally have food dropping to Gazan people, actual food to actual Gazans, and I think they were even not bombed when they took this time. I hope so. A bit of a delay, but the deneb algedi could give us the resolution. More Mars things. So we said war, we said aggression, we also said passion and drive. If you have been suffering with lack of passion and lack of drive, you might have a little bit of a spark in your life. If this is like in your 5th house. So You might have a spark of passion and drive to do something you didn't do before. Maybe it's take a hold of your health, work project, direction in life. Okay, if you didn't feel like you did, I don't have a direction in life, I don't know where my life is going, Mars, deneb algedi, can give you a sense of direction in life, because it's just like you didn't have it before. Now you need it. Mars issue, direction. Yes, passion, direction. Yes, Mars is also sexual. So again, we have this theme where if you didn't get a chance to be, sexual before, then you can get a chance to get lucky. So this can absolutely be the case. So yeah, this is all things Mars. Also, when you talk about fitness, athletics, then if you didn't get a chance to get fit, now you can get a chance to get fit. But also, if you were this constantly athletic person and this has been draining you, then this is you have to be careful, because this is a point where you could get, let's say if it's your sixth house, you could get a little bit of an accident or a fall or a wounding that slows you down, that tames you down. So you want to be cautious and you want to be careful. If you had too much drive, this can be an event that tones you down a bit. So in essence, just tending to deneb algedi actively, okay, petitioning, asking, interacting, saying things, it might be useful. Might be useful so that this process is actually useful for you. Mars is also about the tactic, the way to do something. So if you weren't doing certain tactics before, you might doing them as this process happens. Okay, so you might have acceptance of certain tactics. If you weren't taking certain measures, you might be taking them. Yeah, if you weren't taking action, you might be taking too much action. You might be actually withdrawn or withdrawing it. It doesn't have to be okay. The conjunction, while conjunction is hard aspect, the conjunction with a fixed star of this nature doesn't means that this is a crisis of some sorts. What it does is actually a potential to do something that is more in alignment with healthy distribution of things. So what more about Mars? So iron is a chance, if again, if it's like the first house, the sixth house, to balance your iron levels. Also to change your mind, okay? But before that, you will be prepared, because Mars is going to the square with Uranus. So there is a discussion. And then Mars is going to the sextile with Eris, which includes those who were left out, who were cast out even, and eventually you get a chance to achieve a lot more fairness. Yes, in terms of occult, Mars is also deneb algedi is also the sacrifice star. So there can be attempts to sacrifice like people of military, youth, young men, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, those who think that ritual abuse that involving sexual boundary violation, those things are all possible. And this is something that you need to understand. Hibiscus goes way longer than blood. I'm not talking about menstrual blood, it's willingly consensual giving, but I'm talking about, grow some hibiscus. Hibiscus, basically, if the red hibiscus is used, as I know from African shaman, in modern times that adapts old practices to modern times. And so you don't have to slaughter anyone, you don't have to rape anyone, grow some hibiscus, offer the flowers, or offer even the growth of the hibiscus too. There's the sacrifice star, whether it's algo, whether it's any deity segment, any deity that you work with that used to require blood as sacrifice, any red flower, especially hibiscus, the tea, the water, the flower, dried, the incense, all of that. And for those who menstruate, perhaps some menstrual blood. But then, you need to know what you're doing anyway. And so this is satisfying the deity. It's not my words, it's words of acclaimed African shaman. I don't remember like the account, but you can look up like using the use of hibiscus, called, and you will see this. And this is also important for you to know, okay? Because people were doing these sacrifices, then you get the myth for the fixed stars that is embedded with bloodshed. It's not relevant to our times. Deneb algedi is about wealth redistribution, protecting that which is the outcast. That's it. Okay? Nobody has to die. Nobody has to be sacrificed. And it can protect your wealth, but it can also, if you don't have wealth, will minimize the damage to society on your way to have your needs met. And so if you need to steal, it will show you when, where, and how to steal, or even the technique to steal from those places that you actually need to steal from, not, let's say, from people or from small businesses, and so on and so forth. So this is an issue. Well, of course, reminding you that everybody has an excuse to steal anything, and it doesn't mean that you should continue on doing so. And here, and show you options of, to change that. Or why are you in this situation, for example, it will also show you. And so, yes. If you know that you don't have to do rituals of human sacrifice and stuff like that, then you can also understand that those deities and those fixed stars and those beings that we work with, we are not participating in crimes against humanity by offering hibiscus to alcohol or something like that. So that sums it up. And this was completely by heart. So I hope that you've enjoyed this listening episode, and I'll see you in my next live.